guys, this is Miss Savela with our literary lexicon. So let's start with what we need to know. So the literary lexicon is always going to be available to you in the materials section of the classwork page, and anytime I post a new lexicon term, I will tell you when it's on there, and I will try to bring it forward to the classroom work page. So the lexicon are the terms that you need to know. So I'm going to go over a couple today. First one I'm going to get to is, we already did inferencing, is this plot diagram. It is called the, I forget what it's called, the Freytag, I think, diagram. And basically what it explains is that any story can really be told in, it works best if I can see myself and I'm up here looking at myself. Any story can be told with this sort of arc, this diamond arc that goes like this. So we start with the setting, which is setting up where a story takes place, which it'll give you characters, and it'll give you the time. It'll give you, and that can be like future time, it can be time of the day, it can be time of the year, so a season, anything like that. So the setting is really important. We also call this the exposition, but for our purposes, you just need to know it's called setting. But if I refer to the exposition, that's what I'm talking about. Now, I will tell you, the exposition is the hardest part to get through of most stories. It's the first third of any story. So when you read a book, it's 100 pages long, that first 30 pages is going to be exposition. The author has to set up the exposition so that we understand the importance of all of the other stuff that comes later. Sometimes we think that stuff is boring and we don't really need to know it, but trust me, most of the time you need to know it. There are some authors that are a little bit wordy that could take some of those words out. But for the most part, the exposition is one of the most important parts and is why it takes so long to get into the start of a book. The next part is the conflict. And the conflict is when things start to rise. And we'll see this because there's two forces that are opposing each other. They both want to win. Okay, so a lot of times those conflicts come in different forms, and we'll look at conflict here in a minute, but the conflict is the most interesting part of the story that we like because we like to see how those things fight against each other and how they're going to win. There's usually a good guy and a bad guy. That's another term that we're going to get into called protagonist and antagonist. But the conflict is the stuff that we like. And then the rising action are all those little things that create that tension until it blows. Kind of like when you and a sibling or a best friend or your parents get into a fight and you can tell that tension's building little bit by little bit. And those little things you're like, okay, that doesn't bother that self. Okay, that's all right. That's not going to ever connect that now. All right, you're getting on my nerves. Because they keep building that tension, right? And then you get into the fight like, oh my God. So that, oh my God, that's the climax. It's the highest point of the story. Okay? Now, usually the climax should come at the end of the story because who wants to keep reading after, oh my God, moment, right? I mean, nobody wants to read after that. That's boring. Okay? So right after that, what will happen is, if it's included, there will be a resolution. And the resolution is how all of that conflict stuff that was that, all that boop, 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 boop stuff that we're talking about, and those things that we get on each other's nerves or whatever, it's how all of that stuff is resolved and how all of it has come to terms and has been dealt with. Now, you will run into some stories that do not have a satisfying resolution. We don't like it at all because we want it all to be tied up into a nice fancy bow. Or because things happen that we don't want to happen. That, my friends, is called irony. And we're going to get to that later too. But for our purposes, the Freytag model follows setting, conflict, rising action, climax, resolution. And that climax and resolution should be right at the end. So if we look at an example like the sniper, our setting, we've gone over. We've talked a lot about settings. That was all highlighted in green. Conflict is obviously the war. There's also a conflict between both brothers. Okay, the rising action are all the small things that happen. So for instance, when he lights a cigarette, the other guy sees him and he gets shot at. Okay, and then when the other guy gets shot, in the arm, and he's got to figure out a way to shoot the other sniper. Those are all rising conflicts. The climax is after he shoots him, we think, okay, it's over, yay! But there's still a lot of story to go left. I'm like, what? Why is there so much story to go left? And if you didn't read, because you're like, whatever, I got it. You missed the best part, because the best part is the last line. Because in that last part of that section, he talks about how he was, really, worried because he was a good fighter, and, he was curious, and what curiosity does, it kills time. So, he goes across the street to find out who it is, because he wants to see how great this shot is, and he finds out, dun, 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 it's his brother! Well, it's a civil war, so of course it's his brother, and that is the irony. That's what we're not expecting. But finding out his brother is the climax, and the climax and the resolution happen at the same time in this night. So that's your example of a plot, as we will know it, for our literary lexicon. Thanks, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.